Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Did you enjoy the Eclipse? Abby and I saw it along with my family. It was good. It was good. You know, it was good. It was fine. We weren't in the path of totality. But I will say it was kind of cool standing out there with the fam and, watching the light change. It got like a weird yellow color. And then before you knew it, it was kind of dark. It felt like twilight, not quite twilight, but a little closer to twilight than it should have been for that hour of the day. And it was kind of cool how the sun looked normal until you put on those those eclipse glasses and you could completely see the moon moving over it. Anyway, all in all, we give it 2 thumbs up, do we not? She's got a medium. She's like thumb to the side. But I know a lot of viewers who were in the path of totality had an amazing experience. And so God bless. Next time, we'll get off of our asses and we will travel to the proper path. My husband tells me that in 2044, it's going to be in Montana where we have a place. And so we can just travel there. We're going to go there. We will report back in 20 years. Okay. Last week, we played you a clip on this show of our friend Sage Steele. She was formerly at ESPN, and then they gave her a very hard time about her questions over the vaccine and her statements about Barack Obama declaring himself black, even though he's technically has a white mother and a black father, like Sage. And she had thoughts about that declaration. Well, anyway, these thoughts were not acceptable, and so went her career at ESPN. She came on this program. We played you the clip last week of Sage making some news recently in an interview with Fox, in which she revealed that ESPN, while she'd been there, had scripted an entire interview they wanted her to do with President Joe Biden to the word, without any follow-ups, she said. Well, there has been a lot of fallout from that revelation, including from the sad former ESPN host with the crazy podcast, who we sometimes talk about here. Joining me now on many things in the news is my friend Sage Steele. She's host of the just launched new podcast, The Sage Steele Show. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 330 academic programs as of September, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. Sage, welcome back.
Hello, Megyn. Thank you for having me back again.
Oh, it's great to see you. No, wait, where are you? Because you don't have your normal, beautiful, white staircase in the background.
Well, I was trying to, not flex, because that way is the Atlantic Ocean, just to my left. So that's the light you're seeing coming from here. I'm in Florida. I've got a place here in the height of the pandemic. And my youngest daughter's a senior in high school, so this is her senior spring break. So she and her friends are at the beach. I'm like, don't come up for 2 hours. Wear sunscreen. So I'm down in South Florida, which is where I'll be living full time this fall. I'm moving out of the Northeast.
Oh, it sounds amazing. We'll miss you in Connecticut, but I completely understand your reasons. And if my kids were no longer in school, I'd probably be joining you. Okay, so there's a lot to go over. So you go on Fox News. First of all, congrats on the podcast. This makes a lot of sense to me because I know one of the things you didn't want to do in reemerging was just sign on with a partisanship. Whether it was right wing or left wing, that's not really who you are. And even though the ecosystem feels that way, you wanted to find a way forward that didn't label you that way. And I feel like you did it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And you know what? You're one of the people who inspired me watching from afar, because it is scary to go out on your own. For 10 years, I've heard, when she leaves ESPN or leaves sports, she's going to go on Fox News. I'm like, I have no desire to go work for any network television ever again in my life. Now, if there's other ways where you're able to have editorial control and, be a true journalist, great, let's talk. But for the most part, that's not what happens at any of these networks. So I had, it's with Bill Maher and the Club Random Network, which cracks me up, Megyn, because of all people to give me an opportunity, right? And to see me, it's someone that could not be more different from me. And I went on a show last October and the talks began immediately. And so this has been in the works for a very long time. But how about the fact that we're so different, right? And I mean, he thinks marriage is a waste of time and kids are annoying and he's a complete atheist. And I, was married for a long time. I have 3 amazing kids. They're my life. And I am a strong Christian and Catholic, and we're so opposite. And that's the point. God forbid people who are different can have conversations and talk. And that's what he's allowing me to do with this show. I'm an executive producer of my show, and it's so weird for your opinion to really, really matter.
And I mean, he is somebody who will never censor your speech. I mean, his whole life has been devoted to saying the thing that cannot be said, and he's made a run of it. And so I don't know, my own impression is maybe he's a little center left still, but not woke. Maybe you're a little center right, but not woke. And there's a good crossover there for 2 people to, get conversation started. So I'm thrilled to see you back out there. And now,
by the way, thank you. That's the key word is the C word, right? Conversation, like to be able to have conversations like you have on your show all the time. And it's with everybody. Dana White, the UFC CEO, is my first guest. Matt got a little crazy and he's a dear friend. He's awesome. We had so much fun. And I'm good at making fun of myself when I screw up, and I didn't edit it out. I left it in when I called.
You kept calling him Joe Rogan.
And because he's like, I call my kids the wrong name, and he's like, Sage, this is hysterical. I never even considered editing it out because
that's your racism in seeing all white people alike. I see it. I see what happened there. All white bald men. That's what it is.
Bald men. Exactly. So but like Hollywood people, athletes, politicians, everybody's coming on. People I think very differently from, and that's the key. And I'm so excited to be able to do that and do it freely without any fear,
Yeah, so that's the thing. So now you're uncensored, unchained, unbridled in any way by ESPN, which leads me to the conversation you had on Fox, where you were very much being controlled by your old bosses at ESPN, and you were revealing this and speaking to Fox about what happened when you interviewed the sitting president of the United States, Joe Biden. I was stunned by this. I'll play the soundbite. I mean, I knew that they were heavy-handed at network TV. Oh, we don't have the soundbite. But in any event, you were basically saying everything that you asked, they controlled. And you said every single word, and they told you no follow-ups. And so the soundbite I do have is we pulled some of the questions from the interview so that the audience could hear what was ESPN approved. Like, what did they say it's okay for Sage Steele to actually ask? Here's some of that.
We are obviously still in the rollout phase of the COVID-19 vaccine. How do you envision this season going with so much up in the air still? You talk specifically about athletes and fans, many of whom have gotten the vaccine, others looking forward to it. There are people who are hesitant, athletes who are hesitant. So, Mr. President, if you're in a clubhouse or a locker room with those athletes, what would you say to those who are hesitant to get vaccinated? Governor Greg Abbott lifted the mask mandate. So the Texas Rangers say there will not be any attendance restrictions. Mr. President, 40,000 people with masks required except when actively eating and drinking. What are your thoughts on the Rangers' decision? Commissioner Goodell said Tuesday the league is making plans to open its stadiums to full capacity for the upcoming season. What's your reaction to Commissioner Goodell's decision right now? Mr. President, I know you're a sports fan. I know the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, is a sports fan. So can you give us a glimpse when Dr. Biden is watching Phillies games? What is she like?
No, I'm sure they had that Dr. Biden thing written in there. So Sage,
I wouldn't have said doctor.
No, it could because she's fake news doctor. It's not real. I'm sorry, but it isn't. So when you had this conversation, because I know a lot of journalists have said, well, I never would have allowed them to do that. And I said on my show last week, listen, and I happen to know you, but it wasn't an attack on you. But I said a lot of journalists, and I know this is true in your case, you're basically a single mom. You got 3 mouths to feed. You need this job. And it's great for somebody on the sidelines to be like, oh, I would have thrown down and, taken on. It's a very different reality when you're you in this position, having to feed your children, and you know very well what pushback is going to get you.
Exactly. I don't know that I would have done anything differently either, because you have to know which battles to choose. I had already chosen a couple of battles along the way. And actually, there were a lot more that came just a couple of months later. So, do you want to interview the sitting president of the United States or not? And if you want to, then these are the questions, and we will get back to you with what you will be saying. It was a scary time, and this was right after the election. So this is 2021, March of 2021. And I did it. There's a lot of reasons why I think I was given the interview in the first place. And it's based on some other things that they did not allow to happen with the former president. So it's something that when I'm ready to share, I'm going to bother you, because I think it's just more about the control. The reason I want to speak about all of this in general is because I want people in an election year to understand the control that the mainstream media has, and the inability for normal Americans to just go and watch and hopefully learn the truth and be able to form their own opinions. And if we're controlling things at a sports network, what are we doing at news networks, So I just took the opportunity and said, okay, I'm going to do it and take my orders. And I don't know that I would change anything that I did at that moment. One of the first questions, I don't know that it was in that clip, but it was about the president's opinion on whether or not they should move the Major League Baseball All-Star game from Atlanta. It was coming up that summer.
We actually have that. Stand by, Sage. Let me play that, and then you pick it up on the back end. Here it is, shot 3.
Tony Clark is the executive director of the Major League Baseball Players Association. He said he would, quote, look forward to discussing moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta because Georgia Governor Brian Kemp signed into law a bill passed by the Republican-led state legislature to overhaul how its state elections are run. So, Mr. President, what do you think about the possibility that baseball decides to move their All-Star game out of Atlanta because of this political issue?
I think today's professional athletes are acting incredibly responsibly. I would strongly support them doing that. The very people who are victimized the most are the people who are the leaders in these various sports. And it's just not right. This is Jim Crow on steroids, what they're doing in Georgia and 40 other states. What it's all about. Imagine passing a law saying you cannot provide water or food for someone standing in a line to vote.
I have to say, I really like Joe Biden better in the first clip we ran, where he wasn't saying anything.
I agree. And I have to tell you, sitting there listening to that, there was like a rage in my belly, because I'm saying, what do you mean passing laws against giving water to people? And it goes all back to what? Do you think that because of the color of my skin, I'm not smart enough to remember to bring my driver's license or to actually go get one in the first place? Because to me, that's what all this talk leads to is racism, basically, for people like me who apparently need assistance to do basic things in life. And that's what that was like the first question, I think. And that's what I wanted to follow up with. And there were also technical issues leading up to it where we couldn't get our crap together leading up to the beginning of the interview. So I was having to spill dead air with the president of the United States while we're trying to get our shit figured out behind the scenes. I'm trying to hurry people up over here and say, so how about your football career at Delaware? I mean, it was a very stressful situation. Needless to say, I would have loved to have been able to really follow up and say, wait, so are you saying that I'm not able? There's so much there, Megyn. At the end of the day, I trust me. I know. And it killed me because I felt like I wasn't able to be a journalist. I wasn't. Listen, I'm a pretty good teleprompter reader, but that's all that was. And I think that, again, people, our viewers, and that's what this is about. Again, this is not about, oh, woe is me, whatever. I'm fine. I'm more than fine. And I'm grateful for every moment at ESPN, even that one. It's really, if we don't continue to speak on this and the control that the mainstream media has, the networks, even though I believe many people at ESPN and elsewhere don't even believe what they're preaching, don't believe some of the craziness that's also left wing and woke in many ways with the coverage. They don't all believe it, but they're all just following as well. So I just want people to know and to be careful as we enter this election cycle. Do your homework, dig deeper, and don't believe everything that you watch, especially on those networks.
Want to tell the audience, we reached out to ESPN about this and they declined to comment on whether they scripted your interview. Not surprisingly, there was no denial. A former ESPN anchor who I believe you know, Keith Olbermann, shockingly saw the opportunity to bash a woman and weigh in here. That's his favorite thing. And he tweeted on X, whatever, posted, "Of course it was scripted. If it hadn't have been at Sage Steele, the dumbest person I've ever worked with in sports or news, couldn't have gotten through it. I mean, Jesus, if this happened to you, you'd just assume it wasn't being done to protect the network from you humiliating it and yourself." That's Keith Olbermann's thought. I will note for the record, he also, at the same, like right around the time, posted something else about Laura Ingraham, calling her a DEI hire. He loves women, Sage. Calling her a DEI hire, and then dragged yours truly into it as well, saying the irony, of course, is that Ingraham Angle, who was bashing DEI on her show, was a DEI hire by Fox after the O'Reilly scandal and the ousting of Megyn Kelly and Greta Van Susteren. I don't know what he means by ousting, but they offered me $100 million to stay. So it wasn't really an ousting.
Kind of ousting.
I just wanted to raise my children more than I wanted all that money. So once again, he's wrong on every level, but would you care to respond to the lovely former colleague of yours?
You know, I'll say this. I saw that and I just laughed. And he spends a lot of energy on me. You know, that whole phrase, rent-free, living rent-free in your head, apparently I do. And it's so funny because when I did work with him, I mean, Megyn, it was an honor at the time. Because for those of us longtime sports fans who've watched ESPN for decades, he was awesome at his job. Keith Olbermann, Dan Patrick back in the late 90s, they were everything. He's so talented, yet so pathetic at this point in his life. Like, it's really, really sad. I used to not respond. I don't respond to anybody who's a race baiter or anyone who I think is unstable, and that certainly is Keith Olbermann. I think I did the other day to that. I know I did because I went and found an old video clip from when he filled in for my co-host on my show. And I was asked to go to New York because he couldn't leave his dogs overnight. So I went to him I brought my show to him instead of him bringing himself up to Bristol to me. And it was fine. I got a nice dinner on the company in New York City. But it was an honor because of the history, like how historically great he was. And I use was past tense. And I was super nice. And I was like, how are you? We chatted. He didn't get ugly with me online constantly until I started to be true to myself. And that's kind of the hypocrisy with people like Keith, is that, you know, they're great with, hey, you do you and be true to who you are and all the things and diversity and tolerance and acceptance until what? Until you don't fit their narrative. So with Keith, I don't even waste my time and energy on him because he goes crazy about me and you and many others. He is truly a miserable human being. And if nothing else, I don't even have hatred for him. I don't care. It's sad to me to watch someone decline like that and spend so much energy on people who obviously are a little bit envious of you and Laura, maybe even me, right? Because we don't care. And it is interesting that it's all women who are strong and have stood up for themselves and stayed true to who they are. The irony is not lost on me.
His ex-girlfriend, he never misses an opportunity to bash her. Yeah, and I like Laura Ingraham is truly one of the smartest women on television. I think she clerked for Justice Thomas. Like, he's talking about her. Oh, she's a DEI hire because just because she's a woman. That means she didn't deserve the job. That's what the left is criticizing the right for. You remember when the mayor of Baltimore, who happens to be black, came out. And some crazy ass people on the internet were like, he's a DEI hire just because he's black. And they rightfully got pushback from people saying, if DEI is just synonymous with black, I'm out. I'm same. I feel the same. I'm critical of DEI. It's not a synonym for black. How do we know the guy's a DEI hire? Give me some facts. It's not like, Biden saying, I'm only going to hire a black woman and then hires a black woman. That, yes, you could argue is a DEI hire. In any event, that's what Olbermann is doing. He just sees a woman in the chair, Laura Ingraham, who's brilliant, DEI hire, right? And I'm sure he thinks the same of you and me and maybe his ex-girlfriend who he's constantly suggesting is an idiot. It's just disgusting and it's completely blind.
Real quick, Megyn,
right? He's blind.
He was hired and fired 3 times just from ESPN. MSNBC,
Just from the
CNN,
one-
like every single thing he does. And I said to my boss, I was like, what the hell are you doing? Why do you keep bringing someone like this back when you know that they're not there to be part of a team? So that's just ESPN. He's been fired everywhere he's been, which is why I guess he now stands on his balcony overlooking Central Park with his cell phone and does selfies. I mean, enjoying.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, I forgot. He also dated Laura Ingraham. He's got don't date Keith Olbermann. Okay, that's the bottom line.
He told
Do
me.
not date.
He told me about that, and we were in his little office, and she was on the screen, and he's like, "Oh, I used to date her, and whoever else." He said, "I dated her too," and I was like, "I'm leaving now. This is so gross. Ew."
It's horrifying. Okay, speaking of biased media, there's an extraordinary piece today over at the Free Press, and it's by a guy named Yuri Berliner, who still works at NPR. I was reading this thinking, did he leave? And he did not leave. He's still there. So he's writing this piece from the inside. It ends with Yuri Berliner is a senior business editor and reporter at NPR. And he goes off on them, talking about how hard left they've gone, about how in 2011, 26% of NPR's listeners were conservative or described themselves as, 23% middle of the road, 37% liberal. By 2023, 11% described themselves as conservative, 21% as middle of the road, and 67% said they were liberal or very liberal. He said, we weren't just losing conservatives, we were losing moderates and traditional liberals. An open-minded spirit no longer exists within NPR. And now, predictably, we don't have an audience that reflects America. He says this is devastating both for NPR's journalism and its business model. And he explains how it happened, Sage. He says it started with Donald Trump, that his election was greeted in the NPR newsroom with a mixture of disbelief, anger, and despair. But what began as tough, straightforward coverage of him veered toward efforts to damage or even topple his presidency. He says Adam Schiff was our guiding hand, our ever-present muse. NPR interviewed this guy 25 times about Trump and Russia. He alluded to purported evidence of collusion. Of course, none would ever come. His talking points became the drumbeat of NPR news reports. When the Mueller report found no credible evidence of collusion, they just quietly faded away with the story. They didn't own their mistakes, their dishonesty, their pushing of it. Same on the Hunter Biden laptop, in which this was public. NPR's managing editor for news explained, saying, we're not going to cover it because we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. We don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions. He goes neck deep into the COVID coverage and how they completely rejected the lab leak theory once they realized it was something that right-wingers were pushing. It was just a knee-jerk no. And since Anthony Fauci said it's natural origin, that's what they had to do. We were fervent members of Team Natural Origin, even declaring that the lab leak had been debunked by scientists, and goes on and on and on. And we'll get to the piece about DEI. But to me, this is a sad story too, because in the same way, it's sad to have watched Olbermann, who, as you know, I don't know anything about sports, but I take you at your word that he was a great sports journalist, has just deteriorated into this sad troll who just is nasty to mostly women all the time. This is what NPR has done. It used to be a place even somebody like I could go and listen to the news in the morning. And even up until recently, I was listening to both them and more conservative podcasts, and they've become unlistenable. It's just, I learned nothing. I actually think I'm doing damage to my intellect, and so I've rejected them, and I am not alone. What do you make of it?
I totally agree. I used to listen as well all the time in the car, whenever I had the opportunity, just to get a quick hit before I'd go into work and focus just on football or basketball, Here's the thing, it doesn't surprise me, not one bit, because I think that that's when the turn was for pretty much everybody. People who are kind of in the middle and maybe center right, center left, that's when it all turned, is when Donald Trump won. I remember watching, being on Twitter the night that Donald Trump won in 2016 and sitting on my couch and watching executives at ESPN and leadership roles tweeting things about it and how horrified they were. And I thought, oh my goodness, if executives, the unbiased executives leadership here is tweeting about it, then what does that mean for the rest of us, right? And certainly it was reflected in the stories we did, the way we covered stories for sure, the people that we would have on as to analyze certain things, especially some of those deeper, harder news stories. So it breaks my heart in that way. It broke my heart there at a sports network, because that's where it shouldn't even have mattered, right? And we went there when we didn't need to. Sports is always the escape. With NPR, I mean, I kind of liken it a little bit to CNN back in the day, where CNN was a little bit more moderate. And now it goes back to my earlier point. Where can you go within the mainstream media, which NPR is, where you can get just facts and allow us as Americans to form our own opinions? And the answer with mainstream media is nowhere. The funny thing is when I remember when I was in high school, 1988 election, I remember being in a civics class and talking about the upcoming election. I went home and talked to my parents about it. Again, my family with my dad's military background, a career Army officer. And I just wanted to ask my parents about their thoughts on the election and who they would vote for. And I asked them, so who are you going to vote for? And they both looked at me and said, none of your business. Because they wanted me to go out and determine on my, go do your homework, girlfriend, and figure out who you would vote for and why. We don't want to influence you. And that was they did a great job. My parents did. And now you fast forward and look at what the media companies are doing now to make sure we only think one way. As I said earlier, we have to go deeper, get all those people out of there. That's why I'm so grateful, again, for people like you who report the news. Certainly you have opinion in there, but your opinion is based on what? Number one, experiences that you've been through, but also facts. You happen to react to facts. What a concept. And that's what others have chosen not to do. And that is now the downfall of our media in this country.
Honestly, we have I would say a larger staff for a podcast and radio show. But the reason for that is because of the thing you just said, because we don't traffic in just opinions. We don't just put on the camera what we read on X. We run down facts and we act like real producers of news and reporters of news and make sure we know what we're talking about. And if we get something wrong, then we'll go correct it. The audience doesn't expect perfection, but when it comes to actual facts, they expect truth as we know it on the day of reporting and not bent. Opinion, fine. They understand where I come from. But yeah, this is the NPR's lost the mission. By the way, I have this great memory of my mom saying, you and I are the same age. And my mom, I remember I was little and she took me with her to go vote. And I remember being I was so young, my feet didn't hit the floor of the car. And this is back when you can still leave your kid alone in the car. My mom she left me sitting there. She went in, she voted. She came back out and I said, who'd you vote for? And she goes, that's private. I was little.
I love it.
I was 5. And then even then I was like, come on, Mom, tell me who you voted for. And she goes, I voted for Ford. And to this day, she denies she voted for Ford. She's like, I wouldn't have voted for Ford. Anyway.
I love it though. And I do think it's so important for parents and families to do that. People say to me all the time, oh, you're more conservative because your dad was in the Army. But I'm like, my mom and dad did not even discuss it with me. My opinions are based on my experiences and facts that God forbid you go a little bit deeper and you read. And I try to teach my kids to do the same thing. They all feel very differently, including about some of the things their mother says and believes. And you know what? We have a conversation about it. What a concept.
Yeah. And I feel like they'll come around eventually. I always say to my kids, you can be whatever you want. If you're conservative, great. If you're more liberal, that's fine too. But I'm going to get them in the end. It's fine.
Exactly.
If you try to indoctrinate them, then I'm worried they're going to rebel. So I need to be supportive of their exploration of ideology, but I'm going to get them in the end. Here's more on from this piece on Life at NPR. They talk about after, this guy, Yuri, talks about what happened after George Floyd. And he says, to your point, Sage, it would have been a great time to tackle a difficult question. Is America, as progressive activists claim, beset by systemic racism in the 2020s? But the message from the top was very different. America's infestation with systemic racism was declared loud and clear. It was a given. Our mission was to change it. And he quotes the CEO, then CEO John Lansing, we can be agents of change. Then he did the self-flagellation. Leaders of public media, starting with me, must be aware of how we ourselves have benefited from our white privilege. We must understand unconscious bias. We must commit ourselves, body and soul, to profound changes. He goes on to say that this guy declared diversity on our staff and in our audience was the overriding mission, the North Star of the organization. Race and identity became paramount in nearly every aspect of the workplace. Journalists were required to ask everyone we interviewed their race, gender, and ethnicity, and had to enter into a centralized tracking system. That's obviously to give people a preference racially, which NPR is illegal. Hi, Hi, this is your local lawyer speaking. It's illegal to make race part of your hiring decisions. Go talk to the EEOC. And on it went. And he talks about the affinity groups they formed. Sage, I'm almost done here. They included the marginalized genders and intersex people of color mentorship program. My God, what? You're a marginalized gender person and an intersex person and also a person of color, and you're in the mentorship program. There's probably like one other person in there who's going to mentor you. Then there's the Mi Gente group. That's for Latinx employees at NPR. NPR Noir, that's the Black employees. Southwest Asians and North Africans at NPR. My God, they're really zeroing in. OMA for Muslim identifying women, gender expansive, and transgender people in technology throughout public media. Okay, that's a little bit more expansive. Kevra, forgive me, I don't understand how to pronounce that, Jewish heritage and culture. NPR Pride, which is LGBTQIA, if you weren't already swept into the marginalized gender and intersex person. When did they do the news? No wonder they get so much wrong.
They just have meetings to figure out which new words and phrases and acronyms to make up. Like, I'm constantly Googling. I didn't even know what's cis. Like, these are all words that didn't exist just a couple of years ago. I mean, this is what we're spending our money on. In the meantime, you look at the morale of employees throughout most of corporate America, and it's in the tank. I wonder why. Because what they're doing with those groups is they're just continuing to divide. To me, that is when it changed. 2016, yes, Trump. But then you go to the pandemic in conjunction with George Floyd, and everything went south. And I remember watching when I was at ESPN and on those airwaves, and you had people going crazy over it and yelling and emotions and crying on our airwaves based on George Floyd. What has not happened is going back and sharing the facts with your viewers. That's what the vast majority of media have chosen not to do, and to go back and look at what was happening actually in the patrol car with George Floyd before the incident with Derek Chauvin even began, and how he was saying he couldn't breathe at that point. That's the part that's heartbreaking, because what has happened since then is really devastating. We didn't pay attention to the facts about his criminal record, which does matter. There's a statue now in downtown Minneapolis based on George Floyd. In the meantime, we're taking historical statues down around the country for people who really, really did have things to do with where our country is today, imperfect as it was then and is now. So my question is, how do we progress from this? Like, how are we going to go forward? Because when you continue to divide, like in corporate America with all those different groups and all the DEI stuff, it doesn't help. You have fear right now running rampant, especially from people who are, I guess, not in those categories, right? Not a woman, a man of color, or LGBTQIA plus XYZ. Like, if you're just a white male, a white female, you're afraid right now. I mean, I talked to a lot of those men. I had so many people. I was at the Final Four last weekend, Megyn, in Phoenix on Saturday, and I can't tell you, maybe over 100 people come up to me and say, thank you, please keep speaking up, because we don't want the country to be divided like this. I don't care what color you are. I don't care who you vote for. We're just trying to come together. And I go to work and I am afraid to talk. I'm afraid to go to HR. I'm afraid to ask questions. It got me choked up, because I realized that having conversations like this, and then talking about the topics that you and I talk about so often, the transgender sports issue, and just racism in general, and how it's really overblown, in my opinion, how it just continues to divide and not bring people together, which I believe the vast majority of people want. You're always going to have your fringe on the left and the right. As long as there's humanity, there will be racism, there will be prejudices. And so stop it, stop. Focus on the good in the middle and not dividing. But people are afraid. And that's what inspires me to keep going and to keep talking, even though sometimes it's kind of scary, because it has nothing to do with me at this point. Like, it's about so much more, and so many other people who live in fear right now. And the only way we combat this, because the media companies aren't going to stop. There's too much money to be earned by claiming everything is racist and sexist and transphobic, et cetera. The only way this gets, quote unquote, fixed, or at least softened a little bit, is if we continue to have these conversations and call out the BS and call out the crap. And I understand the fear why people don't, because I lived it for years. And I've been criticized for waiting too long to come out and talk about it. Fine. I did it when I was ready, when I was able, even though I wish I hadn't taken as long. But now we're here, and what are we going to do with it? Because if we don't, and we have a platform, what about everybody else who doesn't? I feel responsibility now. So it's now or never,
honestly, like
frankly.
I
Is that
said,
traumatic?
You did come out and talk about it to the extent you felt comfortable while employed by a very woke dictatorial company and raising 3 children. I mean, I know you personally. I know, like, you would have been in a very tough spot if they had fired you from ESPN a few years ago. And so it's fine for them to say you should have spoken out. Bullshit. You know, we need every voice whenever the voices come to it. Sooner would be better than later for most, because we need a massive army to fight this nonsense in the mainstream media.
Yeah.
But you're on the early side on these issues. I mean, this, like, it's still, all these agencies have been captured. You know, Fox News is still doing the pronoun game and the transgender, you know, assigned at birth nonsense. Like, all that's happening in these even right-leaning corporations. So, okay, I want to get to what's happening with sports. But before I get there, because you're talking about people being afraid, this is one of the reasons why they're afraid. You've seen these women getting punched in the face in New York City lately. There's been this weird rash. I don't know if you've seen this story, but a bunch of women, many women, are just walking along the street now in New York, and they're getting punched in the face by random guys. It's not just one perpetrator. They did arrest one guy, but it appears to be multiple perps. And they're not doing anything. They're just, some of them were on their phone. Okay, whatever, they're not paying attention. That doesn't normally lead to a punch in the face. Others are doing nothing, just walking. They get attacked from behind. Enter Amanda Marcotte. Amanda Marcotte, who I think this is from Slate. Is it not, you guys? And her takeaway on this is that it's MAGA. This is all MAGA-inspired hate for women. Salon, same thing. Okay, she writes, okay, first of all, it's very man-hatey. The alleged victims are mostly young and pretty, and most of them say they were minding their own business. Whatever the excuse the angry man concocts, the impetus is always the same. The eyes of a woman are directed at someone or something that is not him, and he is indignant over it. Well, the one guy they arrested seems like a nutcase, Sage. I'll just say that. Like, I don't think he was caring about eyes going left or right. This guy doesn't seem like he's well and hasn't been for a long time, but okay. Let's blame it on men in general. These stories resonate because the nation is having a moment of increasingly unhinged male fury at women for daring to have lives that are centered around something other than catering to a man's every whim. Unleashed by Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, there's an upswell of loud male entitlement shouting at us from every corner. We see it in the male fans of Jordan Peterson, in the rise of trad wives online, or Ben Shapiro setting fire to a Barbie doll. I'm just condensing here. Or MAGA pundits telling lies about birth control, or right-wing men yelling because Taylor Swift has cats, or because she dates a hunky, vaccinated NFL player. And then finally she says, the rise of MAGA is fueled by misogyny, but it's less a backlash than a tantrum, a rage explosion by men who want to restore their dominance, but fear that this time women won't buckle to their bullying. The rash of men punching women in New York captures this moment in a dark way. Everything's got to be tied back. That's her theory, right? This is why people don't want to say, I kind of like Trump. I might vote for him. Because the next thing you know, you're punching women in the face in New York. I know it was you and you're like.
Yeah. It's so easy because there's no accountability for it. Who's going to call them on, right? Nobody. So that's why they continue to say it. I would venture to say that the people who are doing the punching, it'd be funny to do a little poll, who they are voting for, who they did vote for in the past,
right.
If they even know what it's like to vote or what it means. But for the most part, if you say the word Trump in New York City, you get a certain kind of reaction, right? I will say I was there last week and I'd seen this craziness, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to walk right in the middle of the street, of the sidewalk now. So then I'm not close to a storefront where somebody might be hiding, but I don't want to be too close over on the street too. Like, what do people do? What do women do now? Because it has happened. I mean, these videos, I kind of had to stop watching them because you put yourself in that position, and what would you do when you could absolutely be killed? I just love though how it's automatically, those right-wing nut jobs, MAGA. It's just not the truth, but you know what it's doing? I just think people aren't as gullible anymore or naive. And I think instances like this are actually turning more people to say, you know what, you guys are insane. And now I just might have to check that box for Donald Trump. in November, assuming they allow him to get to that point. But when you have comedians like Michael Rappaport and people like that who've always been so liberal, so left, who are like, what the hell is going on? You know, whether it's that craziness, you automatically blame MAGA or the border. People are seeing the next level this has gone to, and you have more and more people out here calling it out. So we got to pray for these women who are just walking innocently in the streets of New York City on the sidewalks. But in the meantime, take note of who is making this so extra divisive, and then do something about it with your vote. This is what we say, like, votes have consequences. And that's kind of what has happened now.
I got to say, my whole family has been taking Krav Maga lessons with another family. We go on Saturdays and we've been learning. And I don't mean this, but it almost makes you want somebody to mess with you, because once you start learning how to actually defend yourself, and this is a great fighting technique. I mean, you just go to town on somebody who comes after you, and ideally you get away, but if you can't get away, then you fight. And you don't let up. It's just like punch, punch, kick, punch, like all over. And my favorite part is they want you to make like aggressive noises while you do it. So we have so much fun making the scary noises.
Wait, the kids are doing it with you?
Oh yeah, and we're all like, which is not the right noise, but it's just like,
I love it though. I love that you do. And the key is to not get punched out to the ground, right? And so
you just like you have certain ways of hitting, and you don't let up. You know, you fight dirty. It's basically fighting, as they say, for the graveyard, not the schoolyard, if somebody's really coming for you. And we were laughing. Our 10-year-old Thatcher's like, what?
I need you to post a video of this.
I should. So anyway, it's good to learn some self-defense, no matter what your age, is my point. And, no matter what they try to hang on Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, I think that's a reference to Charlie Kirk, or Trump. This is absurd. We have no idea who's behind this spate of attacks on women. And I think you're right. If we actually got the numbers, we'd probably be pretty shocked. Okay, wait, before I go to break, to your point of like this behavior is turning leftists to the right, all that stuff about NPR that Yuri laid out about what they're doing. He says the following: despite all the resources we had devoted to building up our news audience among Blacks and Hispanics, the numbers have barely budged. In 2023, according to our demographic research, 6% of our news audience was Black, far short of the overall U.S. adult population, which is 14.4% Black. Hispanics, 7%, compared to the overall Hispanic adult population, which is around 19%. Our news audience doesn't come close to reflecting America. It's overwhelmingly white, progressive, and clustered around coastal cities and college towns. It doesn't work. Black people, Hispanic people, white people, they're interested in the same general things. Can I pay my bills? Is my family safe? Can we get jobs? Is my kid going to have the American dream available to him? And they're not obsessed with skin color or gender or their lady or man parts or all of this nonsense, which NPR is learning the hard way. Right, stand by, quick break, back with Sage Steele. Don't go away. Debt. You can go to bed thinking about it, and you can wake up thinking about it too. Here's the truth. The system traps you in debt. High interest credit cards and loans make it nearly impossible to pay off your debt, and insane inflation keeps you stuck paycheck to paycheck. Done with Debt can be your lifeline. Done with Debt has an ingenious new strategy to help erase your debt faster and easier than you thought possible. Done with Debt analyzes all the debt options that you qualify for. They know how to reduce bills, how to cut interest rates, and their skilled staff of negotiators, they know how to get debt out of your life permanently without bankruptcy or a loan. Done with Debt has experts who can share with you strategies for eliminating debt, but you do need to hurry because some debt solutions are time sensitive. Here's how easy they make it. Go to donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. Donewithdebt.com. So Sage, we covered this Dawn Staley, who's the coach of the winning South Carolina national women's basketball team at the NCAA tournament, who completely dropped it when she was asked by an Outkick reporter whether she supported men playing against women in women's sports, and gave the woke answer of, yeah, I'm for it. And then kind of played the victim by saying, oh, now, I know I'm going to get all this negative attention on a big day, but whatever. I know you love her. I saw your tweet, but she completely muffed it. And now, as if almost like in a karmic twist, we get the announcement from the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics, which is not the same as NCAA sports. They don't oversee Dawn and her team, but they do oversee 241 member schools, most of them private, with smaller class sizes, smaller enrollments. And they, on Monday, voted unanimously to ban transgender students from participating in women's sports. The trend is not going Dawn Staley's way. It's going our way. And as many times as people are going to call you and me and Riley Gaines and everybody else a bigot, if we take the other side, the truth is, I think, Sage, we're winning. We're winning. What do you think?
I do agree. I was very disappointed in Dawn Staley's statement at that moment. A couple of things really stood out. Excuse me. Her hesitation spoke volumes to me. She has obviously thought long and hard about this, and I was surprised that she didn't have a better answer quicker. I was surprised. Maybe it was a lack of thinking somebody would bring it up because it was NCAA tournament time and they're right there in the Final Four. I don't know. That was disappointing. And deep down, though, I don't think she was telling the truth. I don't think she believes that. And I'm not trying to call her out for lying, call it what you will. The point is, there's so much pressure on these coaches in those spaces to try to please everybody, and that's impossible. At that moment, though, I agree. She completely dropped the ball, but I think it's interesting that not more coaches have been asked about it. How about players? They're not really asked about it, and I don't know why that is. It takes an Outkick reporter, I guess, to go and ask that tough question. Mm-hmm. I know the coaches that I've spoken to, every single one of them thinks that it is wrong. And they're just not being asked. And they're just, therefore, when you have the opportunity like Dawn did, they're not saying what they feel because of the blowback that'll come with it. Dawn, and I put this in my tweet, Dawn knows and everybody knows that she would never have had the Hall of Fame career that she really did have if she were playing against men, period.
Exactly.
I will continue to point out the fact that this is only going in one direction. It's only men who say they're women who are trying to come into women's sports. It's not the reverse. So kudos to the NAIA for doing it. Yes, smaller schools, private schools, primarily religious schools as well. So I don't think I'm as surprised that the NAIA did this, but it was still taking a stand and doing it. And now, as you and many other people tweeted, okay, NCAA, your move. What are you doing next? Also, the NXXT, I don't know if you just say next, golf league for women. They, I think a month ago or so, said a similar thing, that basically your gender, your sex at birth is how you will be defined. And so therefore, the young man that was playing on that tour who won a tournament and was trying to qualify to play in the LPGA, he is no longer allowed. I forgot, Haley, I think his first name is. So slowly but surely, there are people and leagues who are taking stands. Every single person, by the way, the Final Four again, every single person that came up to me, everyone's like, what are we doing? What the hell is going on? This is insanity. And it's people on both sides of the aisle. This is one of the few issues and topics that everybody agrees on. You've got almost 80% of Americans who believe that this shouldn't even be a topic. So yeah, we got to keep being loud. And people, I actually had Riley Gaines on my show the other day, and I'm not sure when it's going to come out, but she was awesome. And Megyn, you know her, she's 23 years old. The fact that she is doing this and having the courage to stand up is absolutely incredible. I give her so much credit, but NAIA, thank you. NXXT, thank you. Dawn Staley, do better, because I know she is better. But let's keep asking coaches, putting their feet to the coals and ask what they say, because I guarantee you, they're going to start to speak the truth. They don't want their women hurt. They don't want all the progress from 52 years of Title IX continue to be taken away. And when people say,
it's somebody only shouldn't have to be.
0.003%,
someone shouldn't have to be. Like, that's what's going to happen at this point. And it already has happened, especially at the high school level. Shouldn't have an NCAA athlete get hurt in order for Dawn and others to recognize it. Got to run, Sage. All the best. Thank you so much for coming on, and go ahead and subscribe to the Sage Steele Show, wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts.
Thank you, Megyn.
All right, see you soon. Do you owe back taxes? Pandemic relief is now over. Along with hiring thousands of new agents and field officers, the IRS has kicked off 2024 by sending over 5 million pay-up letters to those who have unfiled tax returns or balances owed. Don't waive your rights and speak with them on your own. Tax Network USA, a trusted tax relief firm, has saved over $1 billion in back taxes for their clients, and they can help you secure the best deal possible. Whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, they can help you. Whether it's business or personal taxes, they can help you. Even if you have the means to pay, or if you're on a fixed income, they can help finally resolve your tax burdens once and for all. Call 1-800-245-6000 for a private free consultation, or visit tnusa.com/Megyn. What if I told you you could look and feel younger without going under the knife or even the needle? It's very possible. And a plastic surgeon wants you to think holistically before you go to those more extreme measures. Dr. Anthony Youn is a board-certified plastic surgeon, award-winning author, and anti-aging expert. His new book, Younger for Life, Feel Great and Look Your Best with the New Science of Autojuvenation, offers a blueprint for retaining youthfulness naturally and what to do so that surgery really would be a last resort for you. Dr. Youn, it's wonderful to have you on the show. Great to see you. I want to tell the audience something funny about you, just to kick it off. Years ago,
Sure.
and the person shall remain nameless, but years ago, a friend of mine said she just got her breasts done. And she was like, you've got to see them. They're amazing. And she lifted up her shirt and showed me her new breasts. And I have got to tell you, they were spectacular. And it was your work. And that is how I first heard I'm like, oh my God, who is this man? Ever since, whenever I hear anything that Dr. Youn has done or is saying, I'm like, it's worth clicking on. Let's hear what this genius has to say.
Oh, thank you.
So
Well, I
welcome.
appreciate it. Thank you, Megyn. Yeah, a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago, we did a lot of segments together when you were on
Yep.
America's Newsroom with Bill Hemmer.
Yeah,
And that
I
was
remember.
that was early in practice. We had a lot of fun. That was great.
And now you've gone on to do so much. So you're still doing plastic surgery and you're in Michigan, but you're also sort of more focused on non-surgical options that are available to people who don't have the money to go under the knife, don't want to go under the knife. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons not to go under the knife. So I want to get into your background and talk about you as well, but let's just start there. Why do you think surgery is the last resort?
Yeah, I mean, I was taught, as most plastic surgeons, to actually consider surgery as the main goal, that the goal of being a surgeon is to bring people to the operating room. And there are certain sayings: to cut is to cure. The only way to heal is with cold steel, that we followed. And then I had a patient of mine who really had an absolutely horrible complication after a very routine operation. And it caused me to really rethink, maybe the goal of being a plastic surgeon shouldn't be to bring my patients to the operating room. Maybe it should be the opposite. It should be, how do I keep people out of the operating room, yet still get them to look and feel amazing, and hopefully prevent the need from going under the knife.
And there's been some revolutionary technology that's developed in the past 15 years that will help people do this. How much of your recommendations are product-based and vitamin, like nutrition-based, and how much are more like lasers? Because I love the lasers, I have to say. Those, I think, have been wonderful. I'm happy to tell the audience what I get done too.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think when we look at the whole spectrum of anti-aging, it's the way I look at it, it's like you're building a house. And people come in to see me and say, hey, I want a facelift, but they haven't done all this other stuff. And it's like you're thinking about building a house, but you're starting with the spire or the attic. When you really look at overall, how do you keep yourself looking young or even turn back the clock? It's building that house, but the foundation of that house is the food that you eat. So that's the foundation, is what you eat. The next step is going to be skincare. And then probably like the second floor is going to be those laser treatments and non-invasive and minimally invasive options. And surgery and invasive stuff is way, way up at the top.
Okay. And how early do people need to start worrying about this? You know, I mean, I've got a 12-year-old daughter, and I mean, for that matter, it's not just female, 14-year-old boy. and a 10-year-old boy, but I imagine Thatcher doesn't have to do anything to himself yet. He's got perfect skin because like all 10-year-olds do. But how early should we be thinking about it?
Well, I think as a parent, you should be thinking about it from the beginning. And really, it's mostly with, let's say, sunscreen and sunblock. And so if you've got children, you're going to go out on vacation, definitely you want to apply the sunblock on them. You want to protect their skin because the damage that they get, even as a child, they can see potentially later on in life. As far as doing things like a skincare routine, this is something that's been in the news lately. All of these preteens going to Sephora and spending hundreds of dollars on skincare products. That is absolutely unnecessary. But once you get into the late teens to early 20s, that's when people really should start focusing on just keeping their skin nice and healthy. When you're in your mid-20s, that's when you really have to focus on it because that's when you start losing collagen in your skin.
Really? That young?
You do. Yeah. Starting in the mid-20s, we lose about 1% of the thickness of collagen in our skin every year. And women, unfortunately, once they go through menopause, there was a recent study that found that in the 5 years after menopause, women lose 30% of the thickness of their collagen of their skin, and then 2% a year thereafterwards. And so it really does start in the mid-20s. And so really, but taking care of your skin overall, I think it's something, I've got 2 kids. We've started out really when they were very young. Hey, we're going to go out. Let's put the sunblock on you. You don't want to get burned.
Can I just ask you a quick question about that? Because, we sometimes will bring on very holistic people who they don't want you to get a sunburn exactly, but they don't like sunscreen because they think it may cause cancer. There are a lot of people who believe there's bad products inside sunscreen that are almost worse than a sunburn. Now, I, as a very fair person, yes. Irish mostly, I always have the sunscreen lathered on me and my kids, but I do sometimes worry a little bit about all the chemicals in there. So what's your thought on that?
Okay, so this is what you do if you are holistic minded, but you're also evidence-based. You know that there is science out there. And so first thing is, number one, you do not want to get a skin cancer. I'm a plastic surgeon. I cannot tell you how many people that come to my office, they get a skin cancer on their face. It's a little dot that maybe a little area that won't heal. It bleeds a little bit. And they go to the dermatologist to get it taken off and they got a huge chunk missing from their face. You do not want to get skin cancer. You do not want your kids to get it or anything else. So definitely sun protection is important. But there are certain ways to protect your skin that can be potentially safer than others. So sun protection comes in a chemical sunscreen or a physical sunblock. Physical sunblocks are basically zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. These sit on the surface of the skin, and when the UV rays hit the skin, they basically will block those sun's rays. Those are in general very safe. And if you look at, hey, what am I going to use for my kids? And I in general recommend to use those types of physical sunblocks. The problem and the knock with them, though, is that they can leave kind of a whitish hue on the skin. And it may not be a big deal, if you've got like lighter skin.
My husband does this, and he goes to play tennis, and he looks like a geisha. I'm like, honey, you got to rub it in.
So, but even if you do, if you're a person of color, if you've got darker skin, then there's nothing you can really do. So in those cases, I recommend a chemical sunscreen. So if your husband, let's say he's got a little bit of darker skin, he's tanned a bit, he doesn't want to look like that geisha, then go with a chemical sunscreen. But ideally avoid octinoxate and oxybenzone. These are 2 of the very common sunscreen ingredients that are believed by some to be potential hormone disruptors. And they're also the ones that may disrupt coral reefs as well. And so if you go with safer chemical sunscreen, avobenzone, Mexoryl XL, those have not been shown to be potential hormone disruptors. You can get basically your sunscreen. The thing with sunscreen, though, is you put it on your skin and it has to go through your skin, and it basically creates a chemical reaction to block the damage of the UV rays. And so in general, with our kids, we recommend going with the physical sunblocks. They don't care. If they're at the beach and they look a little pasty, kids don't care. They're still running in and out. The worst thing you can do, in my opinion, is get a chemical sunscreen spray. And you see these parents just spraying the kids, and there's this huge cloud of sunscreen dust that they're breathing into their developing lungs. That's what I would definitely discourage you from doing.
Where does mineral-based sunscreen fall in those 2 categories you just laid out?
So mineral-based is going to be kind of like mineral makeup, and the idea is to use a physical sunblock, so zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, but they will mix that now into actual makeup. The only concern with that, especially somebody very fair like yourself, is that are you going to get enough coverage from those? And so even if you've got, let's say, mineral makeup, it's got sunblock in it, you may still want to apply the sunblock over that, especially somebody, who's very fair like you are.
Okay. All right. Good to know. And I've had many moles removed. I did have a basal cell carcinoma removed from my temple. It was fine. The guy did a great job of stitching it up. But you do have to be so careful. And even I haven't taken in the sun willingly since I was like 21. But, as you point out, the damage you get when you're young comes back to haunt you.
One thing I would recommend for you and anybody who's had a history of skin cancer on their face is to get on some type of a retinoid. Ideally, if your skin can tolerate it, tretinoin or Retin-A, studies have shown that it can reverse early pre-skin cancers. And so if you've got a skin cancer, it's not going to get rid of it. But if you've got some cells that are kind of progressing in that direction, it may actually reverse them. And so if somebody like yourself, beautiful woman, beautiful skin, you do not want to get another skin cancer, I would talk with your dermatologist about either a retinol, if you've got more sensitive skin, or tretinoin, which is prescription strength if your skin's
I use retinol.
Strong. Oh, so if you're already on
retinol? I've sensitive, and I tried it, and it was like, it peeled, and I hated it, and then I found this retinol, and I'm like, okay, I can tolerate this. This is good, and I actually do think it's good at like sort of resurfacing.
Yeah, and that really, if you're looking at anti-aging skincare ingredients, retinol is typically the number one. That's what most dermatologists and plastic surgeons would recommend. If you can tolerate tretinoin, which is the prescription strength, some insurances will actually pay for that, so people can get it much cheaper that way. But it is harder to tolerate. I can't tolerate it because my skin's too sensitive for it. But if you've got somebody with more oily skin, somebody with kind of acne-prone skin, then actually a lot of insurances will pay for that as an acne treatment. But at the same time, hey, it's a great anti-aging cream as well.
That's great. Well, wait, while we're on the subject of skincare, I do want to talk to you because I know you have some recommendations in the book, and people can buy the book if they want all of these, and you should buy the book because it's very interesting. Younger for Life. But you sent me some products in advance of the segment today, and I didn't use them yet because I wanted you to talk about them and kind of walk me and the audience through why you sent me these and what this routine looks like and why you recommend it. And you can get all of these from Dr. Youn. If just Google, what's the website so they know specifically?
It's younbeauty.com. So these are my own skincare line. Yeah, younbeauty.com. This is my own skincare line where it's made with natural and organic ingredients, but it has actual scientifically proven components like the retinol, like vitamin C and all that. And so, what we're talking about is something I call the 2 minutes, 5 years younger skincare routine. So it's so confusing. You go to Sephora, you go to Ulta, you go to all these big box stores and stuff, and there's so many products out there. How do you know what to use? And so what I wanted to do is create a very simple skincare routine that anybody can do that definitely works. And we actually tested this skincare routine on a number of subjects, and we took photos of them before and after, and we found that after doing it for 2 months, they looked an average of about 5 years younger. And it takes about 2 minutes a day. So that's why I call it the 2 minutes, 5 years younger skincare routine. Now, Megyn, your skin is too nice. If you use this for 2 months, it's not going to make you look 5 years younger.
Well, you never know.
The person with average skin who maybe doesn't take quite as good care of their skin, then it can definitely do that. So
the average person doesn't wear as much makeup as I do either. So maybe that average person is ahead of the game versus me. But because I wear so much for the camera, I do make sure I clean my face religiously. And I know that's one of your rules. Every night, you've got to wash your face in the mornings too, but especially at night to get off all that makeup and grime in this city and all this. And one of the things you sent me was green tea cleanser, which I like the name of that. Green tea is like some sort of elixir. It's in everything now. But why do you like green tea cleanser?
So the green tea cleanser is great because it's great for all skin types, and the green tea is filled with antioxidants. There are 5 causes of aging of the skin, and one of the big ones is oxidation or free radicals. And these are basically damaging molecules. They damage the DNA of our cells. And so our body's defense against them is antioxidants, and green tea are some of the most powerful antioxidants that we have. For me, the way I like it because it's a great way just to start your skincare routine. Every morning, you want to cleanse your skin with a cleanser appropriate for your skin type. So if you've got oily skin, then a more foaming cleanser is good. If you've got drier or more sensitive skin, then you want to look for something more hydrating. Now, this one is great, really, though, for all skin types. And that's why it's the one that I use. That's why I sent it to you.
Okay. Next up, we have the retinol, speaking of retinol, moisturizer, which is an interesting combo. It's not just, in my current routine, I just put on the retinol serum, like with an eyedropper. But this
Yes.
combines it with a retinol, with a moisturizer, which I like because it helps you skip a step.
Exactly. So as far as an evening skincare routine, all you really have to do is cleanse. So important. As you mentioned, you got to get rid of the day's worth of dirt and grime and pollution and all that stuff. And then I do recommend, as the big step, is the retinol moisturizer. Now, you can do a retinol serum like what you do, and then apply a moisturizer on top of that afterwards. Moisturizers don't do anything to truly de-age your skin. They're just meant to be for comfort. And retinol is a bit drying, especially in the first 2 months or so of using it. And so really at night, that's all you have to do. For a nighttime skincare routine, cleanse your skin, apply a retinol, and then if you want to do a moisturizer on top of that, you can. And if that's all you do, that's fine. That's the most important thing.
This is so good. Guys, listen up. I know you may think that all this stuff is only for women, but this is especially important for men because they don't usually wear makeup. They don't usually use the tricks we do to keep ourselves looking better. And so their great skin is actually, I would argue, even more important than it is for a woman who, it's more socially acceptable for us to have the makeup on. So listen up. You could do just this. And I know men don't want to do a lot of stuff. Trust me. I've told the audience before, my husband, Doug, has 3 things. He splashes water on his hair, he brushes his teeth, and he puts on deodorant. That's like his whole routine. So, but anyway, this is just 2 steps, a cleanser and a retinol moisturizer. So you don't have to actually do retinol. Then there's a CE antioxidant serum. And I promise the audience, this is not an advertisement for Dr. Youn. I'm like, he gave me this stuff, but he's not paying me to do any of this stuff. I just know, I've known him for a long time. You can trust him. So CE antioxidant serum, what's this about?
So every morning you cleanse your skin. Now, if you only cleanse your skin once a day, make sure it's at night, not necessarily in the morning. But if you have the time, cleanse your skin in the morning. And then you want to apply an antioxidant serum. Vitamin C is the most common one that you find. Once again, we talked about the green tea and it being an antioxidant. Vitamin C is the most easily available antioxidant. That's going to fight off those free radicals and essentially protect your skin from pollution, from cigarette smoke, from automobile exhaust, and even from ultra-processed foods that can also be filled with free radicals. Now, there was a study that found that if you combine vitamin C and vitamin E, then that can be synergistic together, that the two of them actually work together as antioxidants for an even bigger effect. And that's why the CE antioxidant serum is the one that we created, because you want to get even better effect out of the one serum. And so you cleanse your skin in the morning, then you apply the CE antioxidant serum or a vitamin C serum afterwards. And then the third step, like we talked about earlier, that's the sunscreen, at least SPF 30, especially if you're going to go out for a day. And that really is it. Morning, that's what you do. And then the evening, you do the cleanser and the retinol. 2 minutes a day. And once again, with average skin, you can look upwards of 5 years younger after just a couple of months.
Okay, now as my super fabulous friend once told me, who was a gay man, sweetheart, you have to exfoliate. Otherwise, it's like watering the desert. And you did send me Youn Beauty Advanced Exfoliating Cream. Now, how often do we have to do the exfoliation? Because I will confess, this generally is a pain in the ass and it's an extra step. And I usually just wait for my skin to get like kind of flaky and then take a washcloth to it, which I realize is not sophisticated nor nice for tender skin, but it works.
So the exfoliation step, if you've got sensitive skin, then once a week is typically sufficient. And that's not so hard, is it, Megyn? Once a week?
You do that. Like in the shower, do you have to leave it on for a long time or what's the story?
No. So you can do it with what I sent you was a gentle scrub, exfoliating scrub, or you can do it. Some people will do it like an at-home chemical peel, like they put like a mask on. Once a week if you've got sensitive skin, 2 to 3 times a week if you've got a quote unquote normal or kind of thicker or oily skin. And the benefit really of exfoliation, as you mentioned, is it's going to help get rid of that upper layer of dead skin cells to get your skin smoother. But on a cellular level, when you exfoliate your skin, you actually send a cellular signal to the deeper layers of the skin to turn over more quickly. And so it gets your skin actually turning over, because when you're young, your skin turns over every 6 weeks or so. As you get older, that turnover process slows down. It starts to take 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And so you get a buildup of this kind of dead skin on the surface. By exfoliating regularly, you're going to cause that process to go quicker. Now, one benefit, though, you're on retinol. One benefit of retinol is that also is an exfoliator of your skin. And so if you were going to skip one step of this routine, Megyn, and you say, hey, I've got sensitive skin and I don't like, scrubbing. I feel like it's maybe more aggressive than I want to be. You may not need to, because the retinol is going to actually do some of that for you.
Okay. All right. And then there's this. I'm excited to talk about this. This big old jar for the listening audience.
Yes.
And it reads supplemental collagen dietary supplement. So, I mean, we've had so much like back and forth about collagen. And of course, we want it in our face, but do we want it in our diet? Like, how would I use this supplement and what does it do? Because I've heard it both praised and knocked.
Yeah. So if you were to talk about this 10 years ago, then it's true that there was controversy and studies really weren't done and we didn't know. The idea, as I mentioned earlier, is collagen it's a huge component of our skin. It's about 70 to 80% of the thickness of our skin is made of collagen. And it's the part of our skin that causes our skin to be tight and smooth and youthful. But as I mentioned earlier, we lose about 1% of the thickness of collagen starting in our mid-20s. And then once again, women after menopause, so much more than that. So how do you fight that kind of process of collagen degradation off? Well, you eat a good amount of healthy sources of protein because collagen is a large protein. But another thing you can do is you can take a collagen supplement. So the knock on collagen supplements has always been it's a large protein. How do you know your body is going to actually absorb it? And a lot of people say, oh, you don't even know it's going to get absorbed. Well, the fact is that we know that. And so these products now, if you're going to get a good collagen peptide supplement, you want to make sure it's hydrolyzed. Hydrolyzed collagen means that you take that large collagen protein and you break it down into individual amino acids or chains of amino acids called peptides. These are much smaller and they are bioavailable. Your gut will actually absorb them. And there are multiple studies that show, different studies show you could take it for 90 days to 2 months, or 2 months to 3 months or so, I'm trying to say, and you can see a statistically significant improvement in wrinkles, in hydration, and they've even done biopsies of the skin afterwards and have found an increased amount of collagen in the actual skin after doing it for 2 to 3 months. So it's not something that is immediate. It's not something that is like a laser treatment where you're going to see this dramatic result, but it's just kind of gently from the inside supporting that collagen production. Now,
You
collagen,
take it
if you put it
daily,
in,
and what do you put it in?
yes. So ideally, you can put it in hot water or coffee. For me, I used to do coffee, and unfortunately, after doing it for a few months, I went to the dentist, and they're like, "What are you doing? Your teeth are getting discolored." So now I just put it in my hot water every morning. And
Okay.
But you can do it hot water, hot tea. You can mix it up in a smoothie or even a smoothie bowl. So those are the most common ways to do it.
I have to say, one of the most beautiful women I know is a big believer in this. She puts in her coffee every day. And I wasn't sure whether it was the thing or not, but I'm going to trust you. I'm going to try it. And so that's good. Okay, this is a very helpful overview. Men and women, the skincare is something we can all agree on. Now let's go next level, because you spend a lot of time in the book on nutrition. Younger for Life is the name of the book, Younger for Life by Dr. Anthony Youn. And this is where I get kind of like, oh, God, how many carrots am I going to have to eat? I know, plants, and no meat. It's like no fun of any kind, not going to be able to have any alcohol or coffee. Like, but bottom line, like outline the ideal Younger for Life skin diet.
So, I mean, you touched on it. And what I try to do is I focus on the causes of aging. And so I would argue there are 5 main causes of aging of the skin: nutrient depletion, collagen degradation, oxidation or free radicals, which we talked about, chronic inflammation, and a buildup of cellular waste. So these are kind of 5 reasons why, and it's kind of a lot of scientific jargon. But really what it comes down to is what you mentioned earlier, is what we want to have is a diet that's going to focus on those things. And so you mentioned, okay, colorful fruits and vegetables. These are filled with antioxidants. They fight free radicals, which we talked about already. What about foods that fight inflammation? Okay, those are going to be foods that are going to be rich in omega-3 fatty acids, like cold water fish, like tuna, trout, salmon. Those are great. Also, monounsaturated fatty acids, like foods like nuts and seeds, olive oil, avocados. Those are great anti-inflammatories. Another group of foods that I would encourage people to try are fermented foods. You know, our food now is completely sterile. You know, there are and there are no probiotics in it at all, other than really yogurt in the standard American diet. And so trying to add foods that do have these probiotics, these beneficial for your gut bacteria, can really help to reduce inflammation, because we do know there's also a connection between the health of our gut and the health of our skin. So
Can you
really
just
what
spend
I
a
try
minute
to do
on what that would look like?
Yeah.
The ones I know of are like kimchi, maybe pickles. What about
pickles
apple
not as
cider
much,
vinegar? I
but-
don't know. Can you talk about what you mean by the
Yeah.
stuff that's been fermented?
Yeah, so fermented foods, the most common ones, just like you mentioned, kimchi is one, miso is one, tempeh is also another one, sauerkraut. A lot of times people just have it on their broths, but sauerkraut is also a great one. Even kombucha. Kombucha is a drink now that if, let's say, you're drinking a lot of soda pop, try to, reduce maybe a couple of cans of soda pop and try the kombucha instead, because that also is filled with beneficial probiotics. And then yogurt. Yogurt is the most common one here in the United States. So if you can try to do like once, maybe even twice a week of some type of a fermented food, then that really is going to help with your gut. And if you've got a healthy gut, that really is also going to show on your skin.
There we heard your little Midwestern roots. You included the word pop at the end of soda. It was fun to hear. Pop. Have you have your soda pop? Okay, so that actually makes some sense. I know you're also a big believer, and I've heard this from my own doctors, from many smart people who talk to me about health. Bone broth. Bone broth. Now, I'm going to confess something to you. I'm hearing this from everyone I trust. I went and I ordered a bunch of it, and there it sits on my shelf in my pantry untouched, because I don't know how to eat it. Like, it seems like a lot to just put it in a bowl and stick it in the microwave for a minute. Like, it's kind of got a funky little bit of a taste. So is there a way of making bone broth more appealing that like we could actually do, and should we be doing it every day?
You can do it every day. So what are the benefits of bone broth? Essentially, bone broth, for those people who aren't really familiar, is you take different parts of the animal. Some of it's like you can take chicken feet, you can take bones and cartilage and stuff, and you mix it with water and vinegar. Yeah, and you mix it with water and vinegar, and then you basically simmer and you cook it for like 12 to 24 hours, sometimes even longer. And the idea is that all of the collagen breaks down and it basically turns into this broth. And so obviously you take those animal parts out, and then the broth itself is almost pure collagen. And it's good quality broth because if you heat it up, it's going to liquefy so you can drink it. If you let it cool, it's going to solidify into gelatin. Gelatin is very similar. It's basically pure collagen as well. And so what I recommend with bone broth, first of all, is the easiest way to do it is basically just put it in a mug and drink it, as a drink instead of, let's say, a cup of coffee in the morning, or maybe in the evening instead of tea. Then you can do bone broth. And there are a lot of holistic doctors who really believe that it's very soothing to the gut, especially if you've got gut issues like IBS and stuff like that, then that can be very helpful. From a skin perspective, it's almost pure collagen. So are there studies to show that drinking bone broth can improve the health of your skin? The answer, Megan, is no. But there are no studies to show that it doesn't help your skin. There just aren't any studies on it at all. So we just have to assume that most likely, because we know collagen supplements work, that bone broth probably works as well.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the nitty gritty, because this is what people are here for. They want to know, what are the procedures available to them to keep them looking younger? And we're moving up the line.
Yes.
And that brings me to lasers, which I definitely want to talk to you about. I'm going to tell the audience what I get done, and I love these lasers. I'm on the air, and I have sensitive skin, so I have to be careful. I can't get like the big old bulldozer laser or one of those crazy CO2 laser procedures. That's like you're terrifying to your children for weeks. But
Yes.
My doctor uses on me something called Pico and something called Clear and Brilliant, and he alternates it, one and then the other one the next time, like kind of throughout the year, every 6 to 8 weeks or so.
Yeah.
And they're very gentle. They're very gentle. Like you don't need a numbing cream. You just go in there, he does it. Nothing's kind of happened, and then you leave, but it keeps your skin looking really good. So how do you feel about lasers and those two lasers?
So those are great. And the picosecond lasers are interesting because they actually started being used for tattoo removal. Because most lasers are nanosecond lasers. Pico are actually on a completely different wavelength. They're much more powerful in a way, but they don't create as much heat. And what they found after treating people with tattoos, And they started saying, hey, how would this do for anti-aging? And they found, wow, this can really help to stimulate the collagen of the skin and create tightening of the skin and smoothing effect, but without a lot of the inflammation and stuff that you can get from some of the more nanosecond lasers that, it's kind of like it's more precision versus just like blasting away. And the Clear and Brilliant is great too, a very mild laser. These are things I think are very good for somebody like yourself where you want to maintain the beautiful skin that you have. You mentioned earlier there are ablative like CO2 lasers where you literally will laser all the skin off a person's face. Those are not being done as commonly as they used to be because they're kind of old fashioned and they're almost too strong. Now, kind of the gold standard for being more aggressive would be the fractional lasers, where instead of burning all the skin off your face, they burn a fraction of the skin.
Wait, and so I want to talk about the Fraxel. I literally had a Fraxel last Thursday. And I knew I was going to be off the air on Friday, but I could have gone on the air on Friday. I just looked slightly sunburnt, maybe slightly puffy. The audience might have been like, hey, you look a little like you hung over. And then it was sandpapery for sure. It felt like my skin felt sandpapery, but you could put makeup on it. You wouldn't want somebody getting super close and looking at it. They'd be like, oh, it looks a little like kind of dry. But it was fine. Yeah. I mean, I saw a bunch of friends. We went out. Nobody noticed. There weren't any marks on me or anything like that. And I felt like I had my new sort of resurfacing by Tuesday. So that I had it done on a Thursday afternoon. By Tuesday, I felt like brand new skin. And it feels great and it looks good. And it's called Fraxel Dual because I had Googled. I was like, what is Fraxel? And there's some scary looking Fraxels online. I don't know if I had something that was mild or something, but can you talk about what that is?
So yeah, you can tune it. Now, all the lasers basically work off of the same thing. And really most skin tightening treatments or rejuvenating treatments do the same thing. And it all comes down to trying to damage the collagen in the skin. And when the collagen, which once again, 70-80% or so of our skin is made of that collagen, it starts to fray and fall apart as we get older. And when you damage the collagen in a controlled fashion and it heals in a tighter fashion. So chemical peels do that by using an acid. Lasers do that by using light energy to create heat. And there are other treatments like microneedling that does it with making a little poke in the skin. So what you had done, a fractional laser then basically heats the skin, but it's in a pixelated fashion. So instead of like burning all the skin, it burns tiny little columns into the skin. So you can almost sometimes see tiny little dots afterwards. And that's where you've actually had the treatment. And so then you've got areas of skin that have not been affected that allow it to heal faster. And then these little tiny burn columns into your skin that are healed much more quickly because it's not like the whole thing being burned. And so now the goal now is to try to get the results you can get from this ablative burning all the skin off type of a laser, but doing it in a much easier fashion over several fractional type of treatments.
This thing was amazing. And they did put on the numbing cream, which I wore for an hour just sitting there. And I did not feel anything. It felt I felt heat, but zero pain. It was quick. And then afterward, I looked a little sunburnt and I felt a little heated. And that was it. Fine. I mean, like, honestly, I could have gone out that night. They don't want you to put makeup on that night, but you can put it on the next day. Yeah. It was almost like, I don't want to say it was a nothing, but for me, it was pretty close to a nothing. And I really liked the way everything looked once I got past the sandpapery few days. That's another one that I told Doug he should consider, but he's like, no. He got something done with his skin, Doc, where you put this cream on. It's for skin cancer, and then they put you under some light in the derm's office, and he's never forgiven me. He's never forgiven me.
He had big red splotches all over his face.
He just said it was so painful he had to leave early. You're supposed to sit there for like 10 minutes, and he couldn't make it.
Well, men, and I'm a guy, 90% of my patients are women. The toughest people in the world, okay, are not big, strong, young, tattooed guys. It's older women. They are by far the toughest people. If you go to the hospital, who tolerates IVs and interventions and they don't grimace or anything? It's older women. Not you. Yes. You're not there yet. But it's the grandmas that are the absolute toughest patients. No question.
I believe it. And he was saying, my doctor was saying he has 90-year-old women who get this Fraxel done. Like, they're tough. And some are just like, just do it. Go ahead. We're good. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about laser. We're going to talk about fillers, Botox, and then the real deals. Like what if you feel like you got to get something cut, What does Dr. Youn think you should consider? And what does he think you definitely shouldn't get? That's actually one of the most interesting things he has to say. Stand by. As we approach another critical election, many Americans are concerned. Recent studies reveal that an astonishing 56% of citizens report feelings of anxiety or dread about the upcoming election. But I want to tell you about AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. AMAC is more than a senior organization. During these challenging times, they fight for common sense and for the U.S. to return to traditional American values. Visit amac.us/Megyn today to get an exclusive election year special. That's a 4-year AMAC membership for just $30. As an AMAC member, you not only enjoy money-saving benefits, but also the AMAC magazine, free Social Security and Medicare advice, a trusted voice in Washington, and a community of like-minded patriots. Take advantage of this election year special, 4 years for $30, and be part of the solution. Join now at amac.us/Megyn. That's amac.us/Megyn.
Oh, look at that cute grandma. Reminds me of my grandma. What a sweet-looking woman. What did they do to grandma?
Ajudar porque eu tô precisando. Tá bom? Muito obrigada. Beijo. Tchau.
What was that? She looks like Megamind.
Yeah, basically my breast implant popped again, and I am having surgery to take them out next week. I am going to go back natural.
Oh, good. Wow.
Or should I just keep it like this?
No, don't keep them like this.
That's Dr. Anthony Youn, author of the book Younger for Life, reacting on his YouTube channel to extreme plastic surgery. And the YouTube channel is gold. You've got a podcast called the Holistic Plastic Surgery Show, but on YouTube, you've got 5 million subscribers. That's amazing. 8.5 million followers on TikTok and 1.1 million followers on Instagram. You're a huge, huge hit. And I love to watch your takes on who has had what done. It's so interesting, all these celebrities who deny that they've had anything. Dr. Youn, he gets right to it. Okay, so let's start with what you like, and when it comes to like filler, Botox, and surgery. Because I will tell the audience, they know I use Botox, but I am very anti-filler. Very anti-filler. It just goes wrong too often.
I think like anything, it really comes down to a little of something can be a really good thing, but when you find a little something is a good thing, then plastic surgeons go haywire on it and becomes a bad thing. You know, back in 2004, I was one of the co-authors of a seminal paper called the volumetric facelift. And this was a paper that was one of the first ones that described that our face ages in 3 dimensions. As we get older, it's not just that things sag, but we lose volume. And so my mentor out in Beverly Hills at the time taught me how to do fat injections. And this was before fillers got popular or any of that type of stuff. And if you do it in a very conservative fashion, same thing with fillers, it can look really nice. But unfortunately, that's not what's going on now. And you see Real Housewives and these celebrities out there, and it's pillow face mania. It's just too much.
Yeah, they make themselves look fat, and they haven't fooled me about their age either. So now you're old and fat. Like, why don't you just pick one? At least you could be old and skinny.
Problem is you get somebody who's in their 20s and they get a bunch of filler, and now they look like they're somebody in their 50s who's trying to look like they're in their 20s.
Yes.
It backfires.
And it's weird. It's like, this is where everybody gets it, right? The nasal labial folds.
Nasal labial folds, yeah.
You look weird if you don't have lines there when you're I'm 53. If I didn't have any line there, you'd be like, I guess you got a bunch of filler inject. Like, it just looks like some lineage
even babies
is expected.
Have those. Yes. And even babies have lines here. And yes, we do get patients who come in, they say, I just want to obliterate this line. And it's like, no, it doesn't look right. And it looks stiff, and you smile and it looks stiff and not right. I think, the way I look at filler, and filler is the number 2 most popular cosmetic treatment, is to use it very sparingly, ideally up in the cheek areas, because we do lose volume there, and adding just a little bit of volume can make a big difference. But filler also, unlike Botox, Botox, the worst thing that happens if you get Botox is maybe you get a crooked smile or your eyebrows look kind of funky for a few months, and then it wears off. There's no permanent effects. But if you get bad filler, not only can you look weird, that's actually the least of it. There are people who've had filler and they've lost parts of their lips, parts of their nose, they literally necrose, they turn black, they fall off, and people have gone blind from injections of filler. So you really want to be careful with how you have it done and who does it. And there are certain very simple things to make sure. Number 1, make sure it's a hyaluronic acid filler. That's a type of filler in Restylane or Juvederm. If you get a complication, you can actually melt it away. But there are other fillers out there that you can't melt away. And if you get what we call an intravascular occlusion, where they inject that filler accidentally into a blood vessel, basically you're screwed. You can lose parts of your nose and lip turns black and falls off, and it can be disaster.
All right, ladies, listen to me. Get the lasers. Get the Botox. Ask your doctor about the order, because I don't know, in some things you're not supposed to have those too close to each other. I don't know how it works. I don't believe in the filler. Get if this is what I do, and it allows you to age, but age well, and you don't look weird and desperate. Like I've seen, I'm not going to name names, but so many people in my business on television news overdo the filler. They overdo the Botox too, and they just look like freaks. And now the latest thing is the lips, Doc, and the lips. Okay, I guess I don't like that. Doug's like, don't ever touch your lips. But if you want to get your lips done, okay. But everyone, they're going for the Kim Kardashian. I don't know how she did. She made her lips look really big and flat. But what happens with most people is they stick filler in there and their lips stick out like a ledge, like you could put your teacup on there. And so what's happening?
So traditionally, when you inject the lips, you inject along what's called the vermilion border. And that's the part where your lip and your skin meet. And so if you inject along that vermilion border, what you're doing is you are outlining the lips. And that's what you're talking about, is kind of a ledge in that area. I'll tell you, getting your lips done is the most painful thing ever. Like, I hate doing it, and I do it occasionally, but I hate it because I feel so bad because it hurts like you wouldn't believe.
My friend told me that. She said she tried to leave after one quadrant, and the doctor was like, no, you have to see it through now.
I had one patient, she came in, she was in her 60s with her husband, God bless them, and she just wanted to get her lips done for her husband. And every time I would stick the needle in, she'd start screaming like, dear God, Lord, thank you, dear God, please help me. So then I kept stopping. And then I go, are you sure we could just stop? She goes, no, I'm doing this for my husband. He wants these lips. And her husband's like, no, honey, it's okay. You don't have to do it. She's like, do it, doctor. So I inject her again, like, oh, dear God, Lord Jesus in heaven. Oh, it was the most screaming I've ever had in my office in 20 years. And we did get through it, but it hurts.
That's not worth it. Unless you have no lips. There's some people who have no lips, like Frank Burns on MASH. I remember he had no lips. Then I get it. But like, if you have normal lips, this is a weird fad we're going through. We're really hurting ourselves. And I'm not sure about those injections.
One little simple thing, okay, 2 things that you can do. One thing is there's something called the Botox lip flip. So if you're getting a little Botox, if you take just a couple of units and put it at your Cupid's bow, which is a part of your lip that kind of comes up, 2 little points here, then it will actually cause your lip to evert a little bit and cause your upper lip to look a little bigger. So if you want to try something with the lips, that's an easy thing to do. Otherwise, there are a lot of topical lip plumpers out there, or you can even make your own. You take your normal lip gloss, and you get some food-grade peppermint oil. You put a couple of drops in your lip gloss, mix it up, and then apply it to your lips. That peppermint oil will create a little bit of a tingling sensation, and it can create a little bit of irritation to cause your lips to look a little bit bigger. It may last an hour or 2 if you're going out to an event or on a date. By the time it wears off, hopefully the date's long gone or your reunion's over and people wouldn't be any the wiser.
All right. Now, why? I understand the Kardashians deny everything. Okay, that's on the record. Why are their lips, in your estimation, so big and flat? Like they don't seem to have the ledge. They seem to have done something else. Almost looks like there's an implant in there.
There are implants that are being used, but they're not used often. I believe, and I'm not her doctor, so this is just my opinion, that there are certain celebrities like Meg Ryan, I believe, who may have had one done in the past, just my opinion. But with the Kardashians, I do believe it's mainly filler, but it's filler that's not just injected along that border of the lip, but it's injected through the meat of the lip as well. And there are fillers nowadays, too, that are much finer than the other fillers that, let's say, you'd use for the cheeks. They're going to look and feel much softer. But I mean, I don't know the Kardashians. My guess, though, is that they probably wouldn't pass the kiss test. The kiss test is something that to test whether you've had good lip filler, and that if you kiss somebody who has lip filler, if it feels like you're kissing a spare tire, then they have failed the kiss test. And unfortunately, probably didn't get a great job.
Speaking of the Kardashians and a spare tire, what is in Kim Kardashian's butt? I gotta know.
So she actually, on her show, had an x-ray done of her butt to prove that she does not have butt implants. And I don't think she does. And the x-ray would have shown actual buttock implants. They're solid silicone. They're basically just the solid silicone masses that you put into the butt. I think she's had what's called a BBL, Brazilian butt lift. And essentially what this is you liposuction fat from the tummy or the thighs, and you purify the fat and inject it into the butt. This is the way most people are doing it, but in order to do it, you have to have enough fat to harvest. So you can't have a Brazilian butt lift, Megyn. You don't have enough fat to harvest to do anything. But back in the day, I believe that Kim may have had that done.
Is that why you think the waist is so skinny? Like that there used to be fat there, but then it's basically been lipoed out?
Exactly. So you get a two-pronged approach where you narrow the waist and the hips and you fill out the butt. The problem with the BBL is that it is the #1 most dangerous cosmetic surgery being performed today. There was one study that found that upwards of 1 in 3,500 people that underwent this operation at one point in time would actually die from the operation. And these are usually young women. Yeah. And so in the last 10 years, well, we believe it's called a fat embolism. And so the surgery, when you think about it, what we do is we lipo the fat and then we inject the fat into the butt. Now, when you inject fat into an area, it's only going to survive and stay there long term if there's blood supply that gets to that fat. Well, what part of our body has the most blood supply? Our muscles. Our muscles are filled with blood supply, with blood. And so where are the biggest muscles of the body? The gluteus muscles. And so doctors would inject fat into the gluteus muscles as a way to assume that it's going to take better and get a better result. But also inside these large muscles are these huge veins, and they would tear the veins and the fat would go into the vein. The vein goes into, or the fat goes into the bloodstream, and it clogs the actual arteries of the lungs, and then people die within minutes. It's called a fat embolism, and it's kind of like if you've got the Death Star and you've got Luke Skywalker shooting those missiles like just in the right place and the whole thing explodes. That's what a fat embolism can be with the BBL. So now the techniques have changed.
Somebody famous's mother, was it? I can't remember. It was like a rapper.
Well, Kanye West's mother died after plastic surgery, but this was not from a BBL. But there are lots of BBL deaths out there. Actually, there was one, I think that this was a woman who was a Kim Kardashian lookalike that was a huge Instagram model maybe a year ago. But her butt was actually bigger than Kim's. And I think she may have died from a BBL mishap.
Oh, my God. Yeah, this is really, now you're really out there messing with, these procedures just in the name of, quote, beauty, taking your life in your hands.
You got to be real careful. Ladies. Yes, definitely. And you want to make sure if you're going to have like a procedure like BBL, and I don't do them anymore. After I saw these studies, I said, look, I'm not doing a lot of BBL surgery. I don't dabble in this thing, so I'm not going to do it. But there are doctors who do it every day. They do it safely. But you just got to make sure you really are very choosy with your surgeon if you choose to do an operation like this.
Oh my God. And don't, for the love of God, go south of the border. And that's all these women want to get it cheaper. It's like, just stick with somebody who got educated in America and is board certified and had to go through all the legal hoops we make doctors go through thanks to our lawyers. This is the one area where lawyers help us.
I tell you, Megyn, I get so many people. I used to cover the ER, and we get so many people come in who've had surgery in the Dominican Republic and stuff like that. They've got drains sticking out of them still. They've got tubes. And you know what? What do? They pay cash to go out there to save money, and then they don't have a doctor here. So what do? They go to the ER to get treatment there. And if they don't have insurance, who pays for that? We do. We pay for it. Yeah. And it's like now they've gotten their cosmetic surgery at a discounted price, and their post-op care is paid for by us at a exorbitant price because it's through the emergency room.
Okay, so let's talk about the 5 top BS procedures, because I know you really have some strong thoughts on what we're getting that makes no sense. Give me a few of those.
Yeah, I mean, one of them, it's interesting because there are procedures that have been discarded, and doctors unfortunately forget why they discarded them, and they try to do them again. And there was a procedure called the thread lift, and these are barbed sutures where you take a suture, which is like fishing line, and if you cut tiny little cuts into it and you run it underneath the skin, those tiny little cuts in the suture will attach onto your connective tissue and make it look like areas are being lifted. And so back in like 2004, people were doing these thread lifts and saying, oh my gosh, it's a non-surgical facelift, this is amazing, and they pull the skin. And 6 months after the procedure, the results were gone because it just isn't anatomically actually doing anything. Well, eventually, after about a couple of years, it fell out of favor. And now about 15 years later, there's a new group of doctors who are like, I've heard of these barbed sutures that you can run under the surface of your skin and it lifts your skin. It's amazing. This is a non-surgical facelift. And they're advertising it for thousands of dollars. And you know what? They're not being honest in the fact that these only last 6 months. And people pay thousands and thousands of dollars for a 6-month result. And it's just still not worth it.
That's extreme. Okay, what else?
There is another procedure that is about 40 years old that is being touted on social media as this great new operation, and it's called a upper lip lift. And you may have seen this on social media, but where we basically cut out skin at the base of the nose to lift the upper lip to make the lip look fuller. You know, we talked about how lip filler is so painful and it just doesn't work for everybody. This is an alternative option. And doctors, this is a procedure that was meant for that. The way I describe it's like the Aunt May in the old Spider-Man comic books where she had this really long upper lip and then like no actual lip underneath it. For somebody who's in their 70s or 80s, and this can really work well for them. But people are doing this in people who are literally women who are in their 20s and 30s to get this scar in the front of their lip, and it just doesn't look right. And these scars can get thick, they can get unsightly, but doctors just aren't being honest, and they're saying, oh, I'm a great surgeon, so your scar is going to look fine. Well, the fact is any surgeon, I've been doing this over 20 years, knows that you cannot control how somebody scars. That's up to their body. And this is a scar that's right on the front of your face. And especially if you're a beautiful 22-year-old woman, I mean, now you got that scar there, you're going to have that the rest of your life.
Yeah, now people are looking at your lip, but for all the wrong reasons. I know there's a kind of lipo that you're not a big fan of either. What's that?
So there are procedures out there that we call them branded procedures, where, for example, there's one right now called Air Sculpt, and they are branded as a less invasive option for lipo. And they've been other ones before. They've been laser lipo and all these types of names that people will put on these treatments and devices as a way to try to market them. Well, in reality, it's just lipo. You make an incision, you inject anesthetic fluid, and you take a big rod and you just suck that fat out. Whether it's a small rod or a big rod, it's the same thing. And so unfortunately, there are patients who are being fooled into thinking that these types of procedures are revolutionary. And in reality, lipo is lipo. And so just don't be fooled, because a lot of them will charge you so much more and make you think that you're getting something that's special. And it really isn't. It's just lipo.
This is a question I always wanted to ask somebody. You know how Joan Rivers was always going back into the hospital for lipo? She would talk about it openly. So I always wondered with somebody like that who's getting lipo all over their body, what happens if they overeat then? Because that fat's got to go somewhere. It's not like they just stop making fat. So do you suddenly get like a really fat forearm if you've had the lipo all over your body? What happens?
So there are some people who believe that that's true, but in reality, when you lipo fat, you take those fat cells out, but there are always going to be some fat left over. There's always going to be fat cells there. And so what I tell my patients if we do lipo is let's try to make it as proportional as possible. Lipo is best for people who have kind of congenital genetic areas of fat deposition that they just don't like the saddlebags or double chin. And the idea is then we get somebody where they feel their body looks proportional. And then if they gain weight, they kind of gain it more proportionally. And so if Joan Rivers gained weight, she still has fat on her body as lean as she was. There's still fat cells there. Where will it go? It's hard to say, but probably fairly proportional if that's kind of how her body is now.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Got it. All right. Now, let's talk about what does work. What gives you the most bang for your buck out of these procedures?
Well, one thing that isn't a procedure, but I encourage people to try, if you've got people who, let's say, are living in a rural area, they don't have access to a med spa or a dermatologist or plastic surgeon, then red light therapy is a big favorite amongst the holistic community.
Yeah.
Plastic surgeons don't really know much about it, but it definitely works. And there are studies that show that red light therapy, in as little as about 2 to 3 months, can improve the collagen and the elastin in your skin. And so the idea behind red light therapy, and they come in these masks, kind of creepy looking masks, or you get like tabletop devices. But the idea is that the light from that red light will actually power the mitochondria in your cells to create more energy, or ATP. So essentially, it's kind of energizing your cells. And once again, the studies, there aren't a lot of them yet, but there are a handful of studies that do show it can definitely improve wrinkles and collagen and elastin in the skin. So when I'm talking to people,
that doesn't have skin cancer risks associated with it.
No, not at all.
Like
this is anti-inflammatory. There are full red light beds as well, but no, absolutely zero risk of cancer with these. Very safe. And if you're somebody who's on a very strict budget, then that's what I would start with. When you're looking at treatments, let's say in the office, that are a good bang for your buck, microneedling is really good. I mentioned to you earlier about how these laser type treatments work by creating controlled trauma to the skin and causing that collagen to tighten up. And so microneedling does it by making tiny little pokes into the skin. So you're damaging the collagen by these little needles. The reason why it's a good bang for your buck is that, for me, Megyn, if I bought a laser, it could cost me $150,000 to $200,000. And the cost of that laser is going to be passed off onto the patient. If I buy a microneedling pen, that may cost me maybe $5,000 to $7,000. And so the overhead is going to be much less. The savings of that then treatment is going to be a lot cheaper, yet in some ways you can get similar results depending on what you're looking at.
Okay. What else? What are we missing? I mean, the obvious, like breasts and nose, we know all that, but like in terms of facial rejuvenation.
So another thing to definitely consider would be Morpheus 8. Morpheus 8, if you're looking at tightening of the skin, that right now is the gold standard for tightening. It's something that I do underneath my chin every 4 to 6 months. I'm 51, so we're similar age, and I just don't want to develop the jowls and stuff. Eventually I will, but this is a great way to help prevent that. And what Morpheus 8 is microneedling, where you're making the poke into the skin. But in addition to that needle going in the skin and making the poke, it emits radio frequency energy from the end of that needle, creating heat too. And so you're creating 2 types of damage to that collagen, and that's going to cause that collagen to once again tighten up a bit better.
Is that the same thing or similar to Secret RF?
Very similar. Yeah. So there are different companies now.
I have a friend who swears by that, but she said it hurts. Yeah. She said it hurts like a mofo.
It can, yeah. So we numb the area up for a good 45 minutes. Some people will do like nitrous, where they, laughing gas to help them. I'm a dude, and I do get it done on my neck, and I just use numbing cream, and in general, I tolerate it pretty well, and I'm a dude, so most people, as long as you use a numbing cream, it usually is enough. That's what we find in the office, at least.
Okay. Good to know, because most of us don't want pain. Like we'll take it if we have to, but if there's another way around it.
I hear you. There's a lot of, it's exciting because it's an exciting time to look and feel younger. Now we even have devices that can help melt fat without surgery. We have one called Sculpture. You can melt up to 4 areas of fat, about 20% of the thickness after 1 or 2 treatments. And this is something we didn't have even 15 years ago. Yeah.
You just you put it on your lower abs, and after 8 treatments, it's flat?
No. So it's 1 treatment, 1 or 2. Basically what it does is it heats the fat to a certain temperature to cause some of those fat cells to die. And then your body then clears that fat out naturally. Basically, you kind of poop it out. And so really what this does is, because we know that the skin is more hardy than the fat underneath it, if you heat the temperature of the skin to the fat to a certain temperature and you cool the skin, you can damage those fat cells and actually your body clears it. And studies show you can lose upwards of 20% of the thickness of fat. Now, the one that we use is called Sculpture. It uses a laser. The more common one you may have heard of is called cool sculpting. Cool sculpting actually will freeze the fat. Same idea, but instead of heating it, it freezes it. But the only issue with cool sculpting, and why I don't necessarily recommend it for everybody, is you have about a 1% chance that fat can get thicker instead of thinner.
That's what happened to Linda Evangelista.
Yes, exactly. Now, I think with her, I question whether all of this is cool sculpting's fault. because if cool sculpting, and I've had 2 patients that I've treated who've had cool sculpting related fat. It's called paradoxical adipose hyperplasia, which means an unusual outgrowth of fat. But I had one that was in her double chin area where she had the double chin treated, and she had this huge double chin afterwards. And she came to see me, and I liposuctioned it. And they had another patient in her abdomen where she had 2 kind of large fat pads of her abdomen, one above and one below her belly button. But with Linda, I didn't see photos specifically, of the area she claimed to be treated, but it's not going to say just make you gain weight. This is something where in the area that was specifically treated, the fat can get thicker, but it's not like your whole body gets bigger necessarily, unless she literally cool sculpted her whole body.
She definitely had like weird bulges where there shouldn't be. And I don't remember whether she gained weight overall, but that's scary.
Yeah.
But you're saying it's very rare. But people do need, on all these things, you got to check out the complications and it's still surgery. And even the laser procedures, there can be complications, things can go wrong.
You can get burned. And so it's really important. Right now, plastic surgery is the Wild West of medicine. And there are doctors who are performing these types of operations who are family doctors, they're internists, they're emergency room doctors, they're GYNs, and they're doing it to make extra money. So you really want to be careful if you're... Oh, some of them are. Don't do it in a hotel room in Florida, that's for sure. And so
but there's all these facial clinics now where they'll have some technician who's going to do this stuff to you. And while I'm sure many of them do a good job and have been trained by somebody who is a doctor, things can go wrong. And if they go wrong, you want a doctor there.
Well, and the fact is there are med spas and clinics like you're talking about where they will be staffed by people who are not physicians, but they have a medical director. But that medical director may know absolutely nothing about these treatments. They may be a family doctor who's moonlighting. And so you just have to be careful. I've had people who've been botched with filler and they've come to see me for an opinion. And I said, well, why don't you go back to the medical director of the spa you had this done at? And they go, oh, yeah, I did. And they said that it's a family doctor and he doesn't know what to do with this. And so it's legal, unfortunately, for any type of doctor to be a medical director of whatever cosmetic center and to oversee these treatments. But technically, all they're doing is signing charts and making money. And if something bad happens, they try to tell them go somewhere else. And who knows how to actually take care of it. And now you're alone.
In this field, you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. Be careful. Make sure.
Don't bargain shop with plastic surgery and sushi. Those are 2 things you don't bargain shop for, Megyn.
Makes perfect sense to me. All right, last field I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
Why are there so many plastic surgeons who are making their patients into freaks? We bumped in with that clip of you looking at some of the extreme procedures that have obviously been done by doctors on patients where, there's the Catwoman. They make them look no longer human. And I just don't understand how there's not a standard within the plastic surgery field of we don't do that. That makes us all look bad. I don't know. What do you make of it?
So 2 things. The first thing is you have to separate out body modification from plastic surgery. So there are body modification experts, and these are people who are more in the kind of tattoo type of a realm, who are not physicians, they're not nurses, they don't have medical training, but they do things like split tongues, like put in permanent implants, like subcutaneous implants underneath the skin. They give people horns, stuff like that. That's a whole other group. And the interesting thing, it's kind of crazy when you think about it, is a lot of these people are getting these treatments done, like splitting their tongue with no medical anesthesia or anything. I don't know how they do it, but this is being done all across the country. So that's one group. That's body modification, like when somebody tries to transform their face into a lizard. These are not plastic surgeons doing these procedures. These are lay people who are body modification experts. But yeah, I think with plastic surgery, it is a situation where people are going out of control because, honestly, of the money. There are people where their practice is mainly, you tell me what you want and I'll do it if you pay me. And then there's the idea of clout. There are plastic surgeons who will do this because they want, on, let's say, a celebrity, because they're enamored by this celebrity and they hope that this celebrity may, say something about them on social media so that they can get business out of it. So there are all these ulterior motives that these doctors will have for both money as well as fame that will push them to maybe do things that a good plastic surgeon would say no to.
How do you figure out if somebody's got an addiction? We've talked about people, young actresses on this show, who looked perfectly beautiful before by any reasonable standard. and then they just decide to have 17 procedures. They wind up looking like a totally different person. You know, they don't look bad necessarily, though they look very plastic and fake. Like, how do you, as the guy sitting on the other side of that desk, say to a patient, you know what? I think you're good. Like, do you ever say that? You know, like, you don't
I
need
say that
anymore.
all the time. Yeah, all the time, Megan. I think the issue that you're dealing with is that you're describing is body dysmorphia. And about 1% of the population have body dysmorphia, where what they see in the mirror is different than reality. You know, so reality maybe is that somebody has a little bump on their nose. A body dysmorphia patient thinks that that bump is so huge, that person cannot understand why everybody doesn't think that they look hideous from it. So what do? They go see plastic surgeon after plastic surgeon to have treatments done to correct a perceived deformity that was never even there in the first place. You know, it's the whole idea of like Michael Jackson and his nose. You know, and then at some point in time, like let's say just with the nose, you know, you can do, if you do the nose once and you're not happy with it, and then they revise it, so you have 2 nose job surgeries, it can still look pretty good. But once you hit the 3rd, or God forbid the 4th, now you're depositing scar tissue every single time you operate. And you start getting into a situation where you're in a slippery slope where it's only going to look worse after every operation. And unfortunately, there are some patients and their doctors who think, oh, one more operation, you know, we'll do it. It'll look better, but it just keeps looking worse. And so that's the number one thing, is just not to have so many operations done. You know, I think that you could safely have up to 3 facelifts, maybe in a lifetime, before skin starts not looking right. Same with the nose job. Like I said, 2, you get to 3 and things start not looking good because it's scar tissue. That
reminds me, on the subject of the facelift, what's an age where women need to start thinking about that? I think about it all the time, because I'm like, at some point, everything's gonna sag, and I'm not gonna like the way I look, and then I'm gonna have to tell my viewers that, like, I don't know, I'm going to live in Australia for 6 months to have a facelift and recover, or maybe we'll just do it together and then we'll tell everybody about it. But when do people have facelifts?
So this is what I tell my patients. So the age could be anywhere from the late 40s if they have a lot of really premature aging to really, I stop about in the mid 70s. But in general, if you don't look at the actual specific age, this is when you know you're ready for a facelift. When you hate the appearance of your lower face and the neck, the jowls and the loose neck so much that the thought of undergoing a 3.5 to 4 hour operation, getting permanent scars both in front of and behind your ears, paying $20,000 plus, having a 2-week recovery time with the risk of complications. But man, you hate this so much that thank God you got the option to do that, and you don't care about these other negatives of it. That's when you know it's the right time. You know, if you hate it so much that you're ready for that, that's when you know that it's the right time. If you're at all like, I don't know, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, then hold off. It's probably too early. It's a big operation. It's permanent scars. Those scars can get thick. They can become keloids. You just never know, even if you have the best surgeon. So it's weighing the risks and benefits and making sure those benefits really fully outweigh those risks. That's really what it comes down to.
In the meantime, we have nutrition, and we have skincare, and we have lasers, and red light, much less invasive things that we can all do to help ourselves look great, or do what my mom does, which is not a thing. Her philosophy is, see these lines, I earned every one of them. And she loves her. Yeah, her
I always say autojuvenate before you operate. So all those things you just said, it's all autojuvenation. It's using your body's own regenerative abilities to turn back the clock naturally. You just have to give it the right tools and the right environment for it to do so.
Thank you so much for being in the business of making us look better and feel better, and for being so reasonable about your approach to this, Dr. Youn. We really appreciate it. All the best to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Megan. I appreciate you.
Yeah. And don't forget, check out his YouTube channels. You'll thank me. It's amazingly entertaining. And check out the Younger for Life book. Tomorrow, don't forget to tune in, because the one and only VDH is back on the show. Love talking to him. See you then.